Welcome back to the Four Sisters Legacy podcast. I'm Aline, your credit coach. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that's often misunderstood: collection account. In today's episode, we'll break it all down and give you actionable strategies to deal with collection confidently. So, why is this conversation important? If you ever receive a letter or a call from a debt collector, you know how overwhelming it can feel. But here's the thing: you've heard that knowledge is power, but I'm here to tell you that applied knowledge is power. Why? Because the more you understand how collection work and your legal right, the better you will be equipped to handle them properly. So this is what we'll cover today. We'll start by explaining how accounts end up in collection in the first place and what rights you have under the law. Then we'll talk about debt validation, some of the process you do to dealing with collection, negotiation strategies, and common collection tactics. And finally, we'll walk you through some of the practical action steps, including we'll give you some communication templates and settlement tips. All right, let's jump in. So let's start with, how do collection accounts end up in collection in the first place? Typically, if you miss payments on a debt, like a credit card or medical bill or loan, for a period of time, usually between 90 to 180 days, the creditor must sell your debt to a collection agency. So in this agency, they will buy that debt for penny on the dollar and then attempt to collect the full amount from you. So for example, if you have a debt with credit card number one, and then you miss 90 to 180 days of payments, which is about 6 months, then they will sell that debt to collection agency A, and then collection agency A is going to try to collect the debt. Remember, they buy that debt for penny on the dollar. It's going to be very important for you to know why it's important. That part is necessary. Another thing you want to know in this process is the statute of limitation. The statute of limitation is a period during which a creditor or a collection agency can sue you for unpaid debt. During that period varies by state and the type of debt that you usually have. And depending on the state you live in, that statute of limitation time is between 3 to 6 years. However, even after the statute of limitation has expired, some collection agency will attempt to contact you to collect the debt. They just cannot legally sue you. So if you wanted to know the statute of limitation for your state, Google statute of limitation to collect the date you put the state that you live in. For example, I live in Indiana, so I will go to Google and type in statute of limitation to collect the date in Indiana. And then it'll pull, and then you'll be able to know if the collection agency can still sue you for this debt. You also have right when you're dealing with collection agency under the FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practicing Act. Yes, it's a federal act that was put in place to protect you. You have the right to be protected from abusive action from this collector, or unfair practices from the collection agencies. For example, they cannot harass you, they cannot call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. And they cannot also misrepresent the amount that you owe. So if you owe $500, they can't tell you owe $700 or $1,000 for that matter. You have to write also to request a verification of the debt. We'll talk about it later. Knowing this right is very important for you to stand your ground, because if you don't, they're going to try to bully you, but you're not going to let them because you know what you're doing. So make this website, consumerfinance.org, make it your best friends. It's going to be a great place for you to have resources to deal in, how to talk to them, what to put on this letter. This is going to be a great place for you to, as a resourcing tool, as you're dealing with collections agencies. Now, we talked about debt validation. What is a debt validation? The debt validation is your right to request that a collection agency proof that that debt is a legitimate debt. So usually you have about 30 days for the moment they send you a letter for you to respond to that letter. So when you receive a collection notice, you have that 30 days to send them a written request for that validation. The collection agency will provide that documentation proving that the debt is a valid one and that they have the right to collect it. And so if they don't provide that, this can be a very powerful tool for you to fight that debt or to protect yourself from scams and then be able to dispute inaccuracies on that debt. So now you receive the debt. So once you have it, it's a valid debt. Now you want to negotiate, right? Because we're not going to go and pay the full amount. You couldn't pay that in the first place. So now you need to negotiate that so you can pay less of what you owe if it's a valid debt. The key to that negotiation is knowing how much leverage you have. Collection agency, we mentioned that earlier, buy this debt for penny on a dollar, for a fraction of the amount that you owe. So they will, and then they will come and try to collect that payment from you. So you can at this particular moment, knowing that information, start the negotiation offer with 30 to 40% of the total amount. This is what that leverage comes in because you know they buy it for the penny on the dollar. Now you want to start the negotiation around 30 to 40% of the balance that you owe. And then you can increase as needed, but try to stand your ground. And then once you agree, make sure you have them, it's in writing. You tell them, thank you. Can you please send me a letter with that information in, and then I will send in the payment. So they'll send you the letter, you pay, and then you can move on from that situation. Now, sometimes these collection agencies have illegal ways of collecting or going about to collect the money from you. Remember, you have under the FDCPA rights and you are protected. It's a federal act that was put in place to protect you from them. So let's talk about some of the things that they can do, and then you knowing it is going to help you to deal with them. They can pressure you to pay the debt. They can threaten legal action. Remember at the beginning, we talk about knowing the statute of limitation. Well, this is where this is going to be important. If they threaten you with legal action, if you are outside of that statute of limitation and they do that, then they violated a law and you can use that to get them off your back. If you are still within that statute of limitation, they still, because remember, they cannot pressure you to do something or they cannot make false claim. So if they know they're inside that statute of limitation, they are not going to train you. And if they do, they have violated the law. They cannot do that. Or sometimes they will tell you, we'll ruin your credit. Well, they have to make sure that they're in position to do that, to be able to say these words. If they do it and they don't ruin your credit, they have violated the law. If they make any kind of false threat, they have violated the law. Earlier we mentioned that they cannot call you at 8, they cannot call you at and they cannot call you after 10 p.m. So you want to make sure that you know these things. Finally, remember this. As you're dealing with this collection agency, you want to stay calm and don't let them intimidate you. We mentioned earlier, applied knowledge is power. This is where you're going to collect all of that information that you know, and you're going to be able to stand your ground. You want to stay informed. You want to document everything, text message, email, whatever conversation that you've had with them, voicemail. You want to document all of that. And don't be afraid to seek legal help if you're dealing with these aggressive, unethical collectors. All right, my friends? So now let's talk about some actions that you can take to help you in this process. You're going to first set up a tracking communication process for you where you want to put it the name of the collector, the date you spoke, who you spoke to, what you talk about, and then you need to follow up. The follow up is when you're going to follow up. What are you going to follow up about? You want to be able to do that if you have two, three, however many collection you have in your credit report, you want to be able to collect, to track all of that. And remember, before you start any of this process, you want to pull your credit from credit. You want to pull your credit from annualcreditreport.com. It is a free website where you have access to your credit report. Then next, you're going to put together, once you have all of that information put together, now you want to create letters. I'll post in the show notes some letter templates so you have an idea of what needs to go to those letters. You can send them a debt validation letters if you are within 30 days of receiving a notice. So when credit card one sold your debt to collection agency A, collection agency A wrote you a letter. Once you receive that letter, you have 30 days to write them back about asking them a debt validation letter. If you are outside of that 30 days, don't use that because that debt validation is not going to be useful for you to help you in your process. If you are outside of the 6 years or 3 to 6 years statute of limitation, that debt validation will not be helpful. So remember, once you receive the letter, don't panic, don't be afraid, don't hide. You want to answer the phone calls when they call once they call you. You want to answer mail once they mail you, or email if they email you, or text. You want to answer them. You have 30 days to do that. And the best way to do that is to do it in writings. That way you have a tracking system of the type of communication you have with them. There's also what's called cease and desist letters that you can send this collection agency. It's basically where you ask them to stop all communications with you. Especially you want to use this if you know that that debt is not yours, that they really messed up. You can ask them to stop bothering you and they will have to abide by it. But I will advise you to be careful when using a cease and desist letter because just because they're not talking to you, whether it's by phone call, email, text message, or mail, don't mean they're not talking to you. They have ways of communicating with you that you may not be aware of. By putting some information on your credit report, that is another way of them communicating with you. So instead of asking them to stop all communication, give them one way for you to communicate with them, email or mail. And so everything can be in writing so you can have a tracking process with them. Also, I will share some of that, cease and desist letter if you choose to use that if it's needed. Now you've had all your steps together. You know who called you. The debt is valid. You send them a letter that you verify that the information is accurate. Now you decide, you know what, I'm not gonna fight this because it is what it is. I'm going to settle. So now you're gonna need a negotiation tactics, strategies. Remember, I told you because they buy this debt penny on the dollar, they're usually willing to settle for less because they will make, whether you like it or not, more money than they pay for it. So start your negotiation with 30 to 40% of the total amount you owe and be prepared to negotiate. You're going to say 30, they're going to come back with 40. You're going to say 30, they're going to come back with 50, and you guys going to go back and forth and make sure once everything is settled and you agree on amount, remember to always negotiate for what you can pay, not what they tell you, what you can pay. Once you agree in how much money on the settlement amount, now you tell them, thank you so much for your help. Can you please send it to me in writings and I'll send a payment. You want to protect yourself from future claims because you can make a payment on the phone you settle and then they can turn around and collect the rest and you will have no proof that you agreed to pay less. So that's why it's important to keep the letter with you. All right, my friends. I hope today's conversation made you feel confident and equipped to handle collection account with account the proper way. Remember, you have right and options when dealing with debt collectors. So don't let fear hold you back. If you enjoyed this episode, Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. Thanks for listening. Until next time.